My name is Ty Wilson. I'm an artist, and I started my journey in Washington, D.C., where I was born, and lived there until about the age of 12, when my family moved to suburban Maryland. And that's where things really kind of took off in my journey to become an artist. I have to say that it was my older brother. I like my older brother, and I just did everything that he did. And he would draw, and he was very good at drawing. And so I would just sit next to him and try to do what he was doing. And interestingly, I continued drawing as we got older, and he put that aside for sports and other activities. But it stuck with me, and it was just something that became my passion. It just became like breathing. It was just that thing that I did always. I mean, I think my earliest memory might be 5 or 6 drawing with my brother. And we would sit in the living room and trace images with tracing paper, cartoons or something from the children's book. And then that led to redrawing Disney characters or Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny, and I think a big one for me was Charlie Brown in those days, and then it led to recreating comics. So I copied a lot of artwork, and so did my brother. And then he would do Marvel superheroes, and he would go off on that kind of a tangent while I kind of stuck with comic book art. I think it did very much, negatively and positively. I think both helped me become an artist. I say that because negatively, as a child, I was very awkward and outcast, so I was bullied a lot. And what I found to be a strength was that I could draw. And so instead of being bullied, the bullies would actually say, "Oh, hey, that's that kid that can draw. Draw me Spider-Man." And that would get me out of a lot of tough situations. So then I kind of found that, drawing kind of set me apart. It didn't make me better than anybody, but at least it helped me not be accepted so much as just not be taunted and bullied. And that really helped a great deal. Now, the positive aspects were, my mother was very encouraging, and that positive reinforcement helped a great deal. And also, I always had encouragement from teachers, especially my art teachers. I remember, actually, I was thinking about this today, that actually in my childhood, it might have been junior high school. I don't know at whose instigation it was, but my mother agreed, or a teacher suggested, and I even had a tutor come to our house to try to teach me how to do watercolors. At that point, I was only drawing with a pencil. So it was the first time somebody, there was special attention given to me specifically because of art, to kind of elevate it to a different level. And I definitely found that to be very powerful, and that always stuck with me. Sure. I think the common thread through all the places that I've lived is freedom, and just that ability to express myself. I moved from suburban Maryland to Kansas City to work for Hallmark greeting cards, which in America is the largest greeting card company in the nation at that time. It might still be, but anyway, I was hired there out of college, and that made me feel very positive that I was on the right track. Although it wasn't a creative position, it was in the art field. I had a production art job, and if you can imagine for a moment, because this is before computers, the department I worked in, we were called production artists, and we were human scanners. Which meant literally that the artist who created the art for the greeting cards, they did full color watercolors or oils or pencils or crayon, whatever technique they used. They gave that original art to our department, and then it was our job to recreate that art perfectly in black and white separations so that it could be printed. So let's say there was a red and green flower. We would do shades of gray that they would print as the red, and then we would do shades of green in whatever style that was that would be printed as green. So then the camera for the printing process would use our gray toned artwork to mimic the full color art in whatever style it was. So I quickly became adept at mimicking all kinds of styles of art. And I did that for 4 years. So that was my experience in Kansas City. And that kind of gave me the discipline and professionalism, and definitely gave me an idea of what I didn't want to do, which was to recreate others' art. It instilled in me the fact that I really wanted to create my own art. And that helped me become more confident. So every experience led to the next, positive or negative, which led me to Manhattan, which was always my goal. I was fortunate enough that in college, at the same time when I graduated, I was offered a job at Hallmark, but I was also offered a college scholarship to continue my education in New York.
Wow.
At a very prestigious art college there. So I had a choice to make, to continue my education in New York or to start my career in Kansas City. And I have to say, I was not as confident as I am today. And so I went to New York. I hit my bets. I accepted both. I formally accepted the job and the scholarship, and knowing that there was a little bit of time in between. So I went to New York to see what it was like. And I hadn't been to New York a lot of times, but it was very, very daunting and very intimidating. And I quickly realized, which was a very good lesson, that in New York I was nobody special, that there were a lot of other artists, and there were a lot of people that were better than I was. And I didn't take that as defeat. It was just eye-opening to realize that I wasn't as good as I thought I was yet, and that I needed more time before I tackled my ultimate goal, which was New York. So that's why I accepted the job in Kansas City, to give myself time to explore and to grow and develop more as an artist. So 4 years later, after being in Kansas City, I moved to New York. And it was one of the first experiences that I had taking a chance on myself. And I had thought, and I had for many years thought that I was not a very courageous person, or a person that took risks, or was very confident. But obviously I did, because I took that chance on myself by quitting a very lucrative job that had profit sharing and a great salary, and it was career as an artist that was very rare, and left that. But I took the money that I had, my profit sharing and that I saved, moved to New York without a job, with only one friend that I knew there, that I lived with, that we were roommates, and a portfolio, and took a chance on myself and moved to New York. And that's where things really took off for me. I kind of think that I'm a person that tries to research as best I can. It was a risk, but I knew that I wanted to work in advertising, and I knew that I wanted to work in fashion illustration. That was something that I was drawn to at that time. And so in those days, this is decades before computers existed, so I opened a phone book and just looked up the addresses of department stores, advertising agencies, and just started calling and trying to ask for appointments to show my work. And one thing led to another, and my career began less than a year in New York. And so I found success quite early in New York in advertising.
Wow.
I'll just move ahead to 10, 15 years later, after living in New York. Actually, it wasn't. It was probably 7 years later. I had, by that time, become very successful in advertising art and as a fashion illustrator, and it built a name for myself, and that it even led to an agent suggesting that I show a poster publisher my artwork. And I took the meeting just on a lark, on a whim, because I'd never thought about poster art or fine art as something that people would be attracted to, because I'd only done commercial art, which was shopping bags for Bloomingdale's and department stores and advertising illustrations for ads for fashion and newspapers and magazines, and things like that, and publicity illustrations for fashion designers. That had been the base of my career. Vogue magazine, Harper's Bazaar, the New York Times, illustrations for places like that. So anyway, when the agent suggested that I show a poster publisher my art, I took the meeting, not expecting anything, but they actually liked what I did, and they asked me to create a collection of what I thought might appeal to the public as art they might like to hang on their walls. So I took some time, did my research, which I tend to do, and came up with a little collection of art. Some were, at that time, I was doing cut paper. I was also doing my India ink and brush, which was the style I was known for, and they gravitated to both of those. They liked the cut paper style. They also liked the India ink and line, and the publisher said, well, let's do one of each and see which people like. So they published a limited run of posters saying, most people we publish, nothing really happens. They end up getting like some posters they'll give out as Christmas presents to their friends, and don't expect to make any money off of this. And so with that knowledge, I signed the contract that they published the posters, and I went back to advertising and doing a Broadway poster and the other things that I had lined up. Unbeknownst to me, about 3 to 6 months later, the sales started, and the publisher called me back, and they immediately wanted more of the same.
Wow.
Both images seemed to have taken off. There was a group of people who liked collecting the cut paper, which was like a dance, African-American jazz theme poster. It was called Rhythm. And then there was a romantic image called Embrace, which was the first romantic image I had done, a line drawing, very simplistic, just black line on a white field with only accent being red, the red of the lips of the girl in the image. And that really sold gangbusters, so they wanted more of that, definitely, and some more of the cut paper. And so that's what propelled my career in New York, which led me to being in a financial position where I could afford a house. I'd been a renter in New York, like so many other people, and I bought a house in the country in New Jersey.
Wow.
And that was where I would summer and weekend, and I built a studio there. So I'd go from my studio apartment in New York to my home in New Jersey and create in both places. So my career actually accelerated to such a point that I had that unique position of being able to have the luxury of city life and a country life. And at the same time, sandwiched in between that, because of my work in advertising, I, just like moving from Kansas City to New York, I asked myself what was next. And in the late 1980s, I took a trip to Paris. It was actually just a holiday. But for some reason, I took my portfolio with me.
Oh.
So I took my portfolio to Paris just on a holiday, but I had letters of introduction, and that's something that's very old-fashioned, but it was something that held me in great stead in those days. A letter of introduction is when someone in one place formally writes a letter that you give to a new person in the place that you're visiting by way of introduction, so that they can receive you and maybe entertain you or give you some of their time. So one of these letters of introduction I had was from a very famous male model at the time. And he wrote a letter of introduction for me to an agent in Paris that he knew. And he said, now, I'm just writing this letter for you because this agent, he doesn't represent artists. He just represents photographers, but he's a great person that you should meet. I think you'll get along, and maybe he can just, introduce you around the city socially. So I took the letter, and again, for whatever reason, I took my portfolio with me and went to visit this man, and his name was Joel Ingrian, and he was an Asian Parisian. And when I went to his office, he was very rude. He was very busy. He was on the phone, and he kind of held his finger up at me when I tried to say hello, to just kind of motion me to be quiet and just stand there. And so I stood and then sat for maybe 20 minutes waiting for him to get off the phone. And when he finally got off the phone, he kind of motioned me over to just show him my portfolio because he saw that I had it with me. And he just started looking through it. And that wasn't my intention. I don't even know if he read the letter, but he did know that I was a friend of a friend. So he looked at the portfolio, and then he just started asking me questions. What do you want to do in Paris? Who do you want to work for? And I told him, no, you misunderstand. I'm just here visiting. I've never been to Paris. I've never seen the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, etc. And he said, oh, okay. So he said, come with me. So we get in his Mercedes, and he literally drives me around Paris. And it was like a movie montage. He was like, okay, here's the Arc de Triomphe. Oh, zip. Here's the Eiffel Tower. Zip. Here's the Louvre. And then we just kind of did this tour in his car, this man I'd never met before. And he's just showing me all these spots in Paris, just to kind of, in his words, get it out of the way. And then we went to lunch. And he actually became my agent that day. Wow. And something I didn't expect and wasn't anticipating, but I definitely accepted. And he was a joy and a great man, and became a very close friend. And he was the reason that I ended up working in Paris, and I worked in Paris so much that I ended up getting an apartment in Paris and living there on and off for 3 years. And my career at that time was, I was very busy in New York. I was very busy in Paris, so much so that my agent in New York was complaining that I wasn't in New York enough to satisfy the clients that wanted me to work for them. And then the same thing in Paris. Wow. And my agents told me that I had a decision to make. I couldn't do both. And at that time, I was not confident enough to move to Paris full time because my French was never good, although I did try to study at the Alliance Française. But I was never confident in my French and just the fact that I was more comfortable in my life in New York. So I pulled away from my life in Paris. I continued to work, but not as often. And I didn't visit as often because at the height of it, I would be in Paris, let's say for 3 months, and then I'd be in New York for a month, then I'd go back to Paris, then I'd be in New York for 3 months. So it was kind of a nice transcontinental life for a few years. I would definitely say New York. New York is where everything came together and where everything was offered to me creatively, socially. It is where I found myself growing as not just as a person, but as an artist, because there was just a wealth of museums and galleries and an art scene and other artists, which was very important. There was a community of artists that I could draw on. And there were people there that influenced me and mentored me and helped me creatively. Not to say that didn't happen in all the other places that I lived, but I think that New York was the nucleus of where all of that influence came together to help develop me as an artist and with my style and what I was eventually known for, and how I express myself as an artist. There was not, unfortunately, there was not a thriving art scene, but I did have a mentor, and that would be my high school art teacher. I'd had many mentors for different reasons and for different things, but specifically where art was concerned, my high school art teacher, his name was John Smith, and he took an interest in a group of us. It wasn't just me. It was a small group of us that he saw potential in as artists. He would give us extra assignments, harder things to do. Because let's face it, in high school, most kids took, especially in those days, they took art as an easy an easy class. But we were serious about it, and so he saw that in us, and so he would challenge us with different art projects that he wouldn't give to other students. And it was because of him that I developed some kind of discipline. And he was actually the reason that I went to college, because I wanted to be an artist, but, as a teenager, I didn't see any evidence of how you could make a career out of that, but I knew it was just something I wanted to do without any kind of plan. And unbeknownst to me, he had been working my last semester in school on a series of drawings that he wanted me to do specifically for him that nobody else was doing. And I agreed, of course, and it was challenging, and I enjoyed the work, and he put together what I didn't know at the time was a portfolio. He took all of those drawings, all of those images, and he submitted them to a local art college, and they gave me a scholarship.
Wow.
And when I got that phone call, I was floored, because it wasn't anything I was expecting. I got a phone call, and they said, "Congratulations, we'd love for you to join us, in the next year as a student," because at that time, I had, like my brother, I graduated high school a year early, and I had gone to work. My brother gone to the military after he graduated high school a year early, but I graduated early just to start working, to maybe save some money, to maybe go to the community college. I didn't have any specific goals, but I just knew that if I was going to go to college or do anything, I needed to make my own money, because I didn't come from a family that had that in them to provide. So anyway, it was my high school art teacher that submitted a portfolio of my drawings to the Maryland College of Art and Design, and they saw something in that work and in me, and they gave me a scholarship, and that's the reason that I went to college, and that's the place where I realized that art is a profession, and it was something to be treated seriously, and it gave me skills and the foresight to know that something else was available to me. And in college, I was able to meet a local artist named Gene Davis. He was I think they were called the Washington Colors School. I forgot that the group, and a 60s art group. And he was in the same group of artists with Helen Frankenthaler and Morris Lewis, and there were a group of artists that were doing radical contemporary watercolor and oil paintings in the 60s that were very different. Anyway, so I interviewed him for a college paper. And he was someone that gave me we only met the one time, and he was someone that gave me some great advice. It was interesting because I don't know how it came to me, but going back to the phone book, in college we had an assignment to do a paper on a famous artist. And most people did some historical artist that had long been dead, but for some reason I found this artist was very much alive and living in Washington, D.C. I called him on the phone, and he liked my chutzpah and agreed to have this college kid come to his house to interview him. Wow. And so he was very me, and he showed me that you could make a living and have a life as an artist. Very much so, because again, that's the place where I learned a discipline, and they stress professionalism. That an artist is if you wanted a life as an artist, you should treat your profession just as someone would if they were going to be a doctor or a dentist. One of my professors in college was often, he often would say, a doctor doesn't give away an exam. A dentist doesn't give away a filling. So you don't give away your art. You're a professional. You sell your art. This is how you make your living. This is the value that you put on your work. And that became very important. And through college, I made some connections to start freelancing locally. So I was actually making money doing little side jobs in the area. And so all those little possibilities, although very small, just were like seeds that showed me that if you planted them, that they could grow into something else. Wow. And because of my college, that's where the opportunity came to not only continue my education in New York at a more prestigious art college, but that's where Hallmark came recruiting, because they were at that time on a nationwide search for artists. And our little school in suburban Maryland was where they came to interview all of us. And I was one of 2 people picked in the state of Maryland to be hired by Hallmark that year. And they just happened to be myself and a classmate. Sure. I don't actually remember whose idea QVC was, but it sure wasn't mine. But I took the opportunity. And again, just like the beginning of my post-art career, when my publisher said, don't get your hopes up, this isn't going to amount to much, don't be too invested in this. The same thing happened with the experience with QVC. For whatever reason, they took me on or took on my poster art to sell, with the understanding telling me, post artwork doesn't sell, poster art doesn't sell here. But they just had some dead air, or they just needed to sell a time slot. So they had me on with very low expectations. And I was slated to be on for 15 minutes, which was a lot of time, because time is money on QVC, because they sell so much by the minute. And when I went on, they mic'd me, they told me who the host was going to be, and I knew QVC, but I was not really a shopper or someone who was very adept at the channel, but I knew how popular they were and what an opportunity it was. So I went on, and it was the first time I was in a studio, and at that time this was cutting-edge technology. There was myself on the set with a host. They had my posters there. They had like a mock living room set up behind us, which I had expected. But there were no cameramen. There were robots. And this huge space, and that kind of threw me. So I wasn't expecting that. So there were robot cameramen pointed at us in this huge hall. And when they started selling the posters, for whatever reason, they quickly took off, and people started calling in. People started ordering very quickly. And instead of the 15 minutes I was supposed to be there, they sold out in 7.5 minutes.
Wow.
And the host was so flustered, she didn't really know what to do with me. And so instead of just vamping for time, she just literally almost pushed me off stage. She just said, we're sold out. Thank you so much. And goodbye, Ty Wilson. And it wasn't a shove, but she just kind of nudged me out of the camera shot, because everybody was shocked. Everybody was shocked. And so was I. And so, when I went back to the green room, which is the dressing room area where people get ready, people were applauding, and my agent was there, and everybody was just shocked, including QVC. Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was confidence inducing so much. It's just made me happy. It was validating. That's the thing. I mean, all of these experiences, from working at Hallmark to moving to New York to getting my first job so soon after I moved there to success as a poster artist, I find it all just humbling. I was very humbled that anybody at any stage in my career, whether it was $5 for a drawing to a classmate in grade school or high school, to the amount of money I could command at the height of my career in New York, to just the millions of posters that I had sold, I found it very humbling. And the QVC experience was one of many of those. I think once I started to become recognized for my poster art, and then the visibility with promotion, and people started to see my face, because my name, Ty Wilson, was not very indicative of any origin, so people didn't really know me as a person. So anyway, when people became to know me, that I was African American, I took that mantle on seriously, that the first that I had made, the inroads that I had made, was a privilege. And it was something, again, that humbled me, and something that I took seriously. And I always took any opportunity I could to speak to other young African Americans or any other ethnic group, to give them visibility, or give them advice, or give them a hand up, or give them an opportunity, the same as I had, because I think it's very important to lift people up the same way that you have, because nobody gets there on their own. So I took that very seriously, to have any first that I may have had. Again, even in advertising and at the beginning of my career, I was usually the only African American person in the room. Not only the first African American artist, but there were no African American art directors or creative directors, or the buyers or fashion designers. So most of my career, I've been the only African American in the room, and I take the weight of that seriously and try to represent myself accordingly. And if that adds to any kind of forward momentum for others, I am grateful and happy for that. Yes, I think when I was in France and I was surrounded by such culture and history, the Louvre, and for me specifically, the Henri Matisse Museum, which was very near where I live, is a place I would visit often, just sit in the garden and look at the sculptures. I found that I had more confidence, and I would be more spontaneous. I was less studied in my work, and by that I mean I didn't labor over it so much. I was able to appreciate spontaneity, and I think that kind of accessed growth and freedom in my work. And I wouldn't have had that had it not been for living in Paris and seeing all the riches, not just with art, but with music and food and photography and opera and all those other cultural areas, as well as the people. People were very warm and very inviting and made me feel very, very welcome. Oh, that's a great question. I don't find that I need to adapt so much, as the wonderful thing about art is that it's universal. And so no matter where you are, it comes with you. And it can be communicated regardless of your environment or where you live. So I didn't have to adapt so much as just continue to express myself and feel the freedom that I have in any and every place that I've ever lived. Another great question. I think for me, what I had found in my poster art and fine art is that there was a wonderful quote that a writer had said, James N. Cain, and he said, if your work doesn't keep you up at night, it won't keep anybody else up either. Meaning that if you aren't excited about what you're doing, nobody else will be excited. So first and foremost, I always created art selfishly for myself. If it was something that I wasn't totally invested in, enjoyed doing and seeing, then there was no reason to share with anybody else. And I'm just lucky enough that other people felt the same about the work. So to answer your question, I never tailored my work to appeal to people, but I did want to approach as wide an audience as possible. And by that I mean that originally my art was, I would call for a mass audience, and then I would get some communication, because as time went on and the computer and the internet was invented and feedback was more readily available, would find that, groups of people, African Americans and other ethnic groups, were asking for representation in my work of them. Where can I see myself in your work? And then it made me focus more specifically on representing a greater range of people. And if anything, that was something that became a focus. The work still had to come first and foremost from me, but then I was conscious of who I was trying to communicate to. Yeah, there have been so many. There are a lot. I mean, I can give you a couple of examples. I will say that, again, it's very, very humbling that what I would do, or in the past, I would do personal appearances. I don't do that anymore. But I would do personal appearances, and there was one time I was doing a personal appearance somewhere in the country. I don't remember where, and there was such a line of people and such a swell of collectors that came out to see me that afterwards I was told that there was a collector that wanted to see me but couldn't because they were in the hospital. And they were disappointed and that I was leaving, and that they wouldn't be, but that the doctors wouldn't release them so that they could meet. And so I was so touched by that I went to the hospital to meet this person and take them a poster. Wow. and spend a little time with him. And that's something that always stayed with me, that a person was that moved by my artwork. And there was another gallery owner that, after having me to his gallery a couple of times, and we had spent some time together, we weren't friends by any means, but we had connected on some level, enough so that he named his child after me. Wow. Quite the honor. So, very much so. Those are just two stories of many that I carry with me, and I'm very grateful and humbled by. I am very pleased that I can say that I have made my mark and have left a little bit of a statement in the things that I have accomplished. And I can sit back as an elder now and see all the younger generation and other African American artists coming up behind me, whether it's in commercial or fine art. So I'm very pleased with the fact of what I had done to establish myself, which gave others the ability to see someone that looked like them, to take a chance on themselves, to then move forward. And then by the fact of me being in so many rooms by myself, that now there are more people that look like me in those rooms. And so it's more commonplace, and it's not such an exception. And it's more of a rule and more of a given. And I'm very appreciative for that in any way that I might have added to that. Probably being a psychologist. There very well may be. I think that art is very healing, as on a different level than psychology, but I think there may be a connection. Sure, I think in this very competitive world, I think that what a young artist needs to do to break into a new market would be to develop their own style, have your own unique voice. What can you do that's different? What can you show that is unique to you and no one else? Secondly, I would say professionalism. It sounds very trite and very simple, but don't discount being professional, showing up on time, following through with your commitments, and doing all that you can if you've committed to a project. And third, I would say that a person going into a new market should have the confidence to fail, to try and explore and do new things. I would say never taking no for an answer. I would say if you have confidence in yourself and you believe that you can be, then you should move forward regardless of what anybody says. Just because they haven't seen it before doesn't mean they're not going to want to see it tomorrow. And so I really believe in the ability of a person to believe in themselves regardless of what anybody else says, and pursuing your art with all of your passion until you've exhausted all possibilities. And I think that sets people apart just by not accepting no. Thank you very much, Juan. It's been a pleasure.